Hi, everyone. This is Reinette Senum with Reinette Senum's foghornexpress.substack.com. I have Jim Lee joining me today. Jim Lee, many people know from ClimateViewer.com. He also has connect.climateviewer.com as well. And you may or may not be familiar with him, but he has compiled the best geoengineering information out there, including the history of geoengineering. And as many of you know, we are launching a lawsuit against the biggest perpetrators. We've been reaching out to all these different experts in their respective fields. And Jim Lee is one of the individuals who we have reached out to. And Nikki Florio, who is working with this lawsuit, knows Jim, and we've had a couple really good meetings with him. I want him to join me today because he has the most thorough history on geoengineering. And in fact, I don't think there's anyone else around the whole entire planet who has what he has. So we want to actually start first in this series of geoengineering episodes. We want to start first with the history so you can understand how long it's been going on and how we got here and what's actually really going on over our heads. So Mr. Jim Lee, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Reinette.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. We were talking last week, 2-hour little conversation, and I really hated getting off the conference call because my mind was being blown. But you were so kind to take some of this time that you have right now to really explain to our viewers the history of geoengineering, and it's quite surprising. So if you don't mind, do you want to give any kind of history at all of yourself or how you got into this? And before we get into the history of geoengineering, how would you like to go?
I'll give a brief history. I'm 46 years old. I'm from Sumter, South Carolina. That's named after General Thomas Sumter, Sumter. I was in Air Force Junior ROTC. I've taken 1 year of weather studies. Weather modification never came up. Flash forward past, designing video games and 3D graphics and all of that sort of stuff. I had a child. In 2009, I had to stop caring just about myself and figured maybe some of the stuff that I've learned on the internet for the past 30 years, I should probably put to use. And chief among those was obviously this weather control idea and my disgust of the geoengineers. This geoengineering pollution solution for global warming. And, I devoted a great deal of time at first to using Google Earth to map out weather modification projects around the world. And at the time, they had something called the Google Earth community, which was basically a forum where you could post your Google Earth files, these KML files. And mine was in the science section. It had been cited, a couple thousand times. It had well over 100,000 views and downloads. And then I included weather modification projects in there. And the moderators decided to move it from the science section to the other sentient side. So they moved me to the Alex Jones tinfoil hat section of the Google Earth community. And then I did the dumbest thing you could possibly do, and that's argue with moderators. And I would say that was because I hate bullies, and I have a particular disgust of all moderators on anything. It doesn't matter. If you're a moderator, I just know that deep down in my soul, I probably hate you. You were beat up in school. That's why you do what you do. Don't try to argue with me on this. Anyway, so I set upon, I chose to prove to the world beyond a shadow of a doubt that the past 100 years of weather modification history was real. And I achieved that goal, I would say 7 years ago. And I know this based on the plethora of publications that are now in the public eye that were non-existent when I started. And between that and well over 200 citations on scholar.google.com, I've made a huge dent in the public perception of it, at least in the scientific and academic community. But there still is this, large gatekeeper shadow ban wall between me and people just seeking this information, because they really don't want it to get out. And nonetheless, I persist.
That's a great little slogan. Well, if you don't mind, why don't we pull up your ClimateViewer and the historical timeline and start showing folks, how long this has been going on and in its varied forms. So,
sure. Give me 1 second.
sure.
So I have 3 different websites. ClimateViewer.com is my blog. That's where I've done most of my research for the longest time. And when I went to Ed Griffin's Global Warming and Inconvenient Lie, I made the announcement that I was going to create another website, weathermodificationhistory.com. And that's what we're going to focus on today. I have a third website. It's climateviewer.org, and that's ClimateViewer Maps. That's where, to this day, my Google Earth files, as a middle finger to the Google Earth mods, reside. So you can go to climateviewer.org and you can monitor your world in real time satellites, fires, volcanoes, air quality, in addition to seeing things like 2,600 nuclear detonations, all the nuclear reactors in the world, the Five Eyes Stone Ghost network of all the spy facilities around the world, undersea cables. They're more than you can shake a stick at.
Wow. And so I apologize. I did say climateviewer.com. You said it's climateviewer.org. So make sure people have that correct.
It's both.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, so climateviewer.com is my main website. If you just go to connect.climateviewer.com is the easiest way, and then you can find all 3 of my websites and all 4 of my video channels and my social medias, and all the things are in one spot. So connect.climateviewer.com, and so you'll be able to find a link to this beautiful page right here.
Okay, fantastic. I'll add this up. So I did have somebody, by the way, here it is. I had someone ask, why do you have the little eyeball as your logo?
So real quickly on that, I get asked that all the time, usually by drive-buyers. They haven't figured it out yet. One, I kind of use it to scare off the easily, people who get deer in the headlights for symbols. But really, on a deeper level, there's an idea of surveillance and sousveillance. Sousveillance, SOUS, is also known as underveillance, or watching the watchers. And being that the name of my website is Climate Viewer, if you can think of a way to view other than like remote viewing with your third eye, even that's an eye. So it's an eye because it views. I take the macro view on things. It's not just about climate change. It's geoengineering, pollution, privacy, and propaganda. So that includes the political climate and, just your general perceptions of things and how they're related. So if you're an activist and you try to fight geoengineering or pollution, the government or private institutions are going to violate your privacy, and they're going to make up propaganda about you, or public relations or perception management. So that's how these things are linked together. So the eyeball specifically is a reference to the idea of watching the watchers.
Okay, gotcha.
And if you look very closely, it's kind of hidden in there, but my logo's actually got a little dot in the center, and if you turn this one this way, it's a C and a V. It's
gotcha.
It's one of those little
very fancy. Okay, good. So I did have some folks ask. I'm like, I did not have the answer, so I was prompted to ask you.
Well, I tell them all the exact same thing. I live in the finest double wide the Illuminati has ever afforded me.
They told me. I'm just kidding.
I mean, I heard Nikki called me a redneck the other day. So me and her, she was on the EMF guy, and she's like, she referred to me as redneck. Oh, she's going down. She's down.
A redneck Sierra mountain girl, so she has no right to speak.
Yeah, tells me she's on top of a mountain the other day, and she wants to call me a freaking redneck.
Okay, so
Classic.
let's get the history up here. You had it up and then we put it down, and now it's my turn to pop that baby up on the screen. Here we go.
Okay, so this image pretty much encapsulates what's going on here. That the idea of what's man-made versus what's natural. You got the lawyer in the briefcase versus the farmer. I can't better encapsulate this. This is a beautiful graphic done by my friend Dominic Moran. I love it. Mwah. It's just perfect.
Yes, yeah.
So our saying is those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it. And as I told Reinette the other day, those who study the past are doomed to sit idly by as others repeat it. But nonetheless, it's our duty to know what we're talking about. So I created this website with the specific purpose of taking ClimateViewer.com as my personal opinions, plus my research, plus my face, plus my videos. So to get me out of that picture, I wanted to have a place that was just the facts. So as you can see here, I've got some fancy little gadgets. I'm a web designer. So starting all the way back in 1841 with James Pollard Espy, the Storm King. He was the originator of the U.S. Naval weather map, and he was a prominent, meteorologist. He proposed burning forest fires on the west coast of the United States to make rainfall on the east coast.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's something.
Charles Mallory Hadfield, the moisture accelerator, makes rain for Los Angeles, floods San Diego. This was another little thing that got me into it, because when I was in my youth, I followed the Grateful Dead. I went to Fish concerts, and then my other favorite band was called Widespread Panic. And Widespread Panic has a song called Hatfield. And I mean, I heard it 100 times before ever really getting into all of this. So all of the commonalities: I was born in the year of the dragon. In Chinese mythology, dragons control the weather. I was listening to Widespread Panic. About this story about Hatfield is absolutely fascinating. So in Los Angeles, you can actually click these and go directly to them. And nice. In Los Angeles, he was basically, he made rain for LA is what it says. And then he flooded San Diego. So this is him mixing up his chemicals. In the early days prior to 1946, it was known as pluviculture. That's the age of pluviculture, according to James Roger Fleming, who coined the term. Prominent weather modification historian. So he's mixing up chemicals. He's burning them. They go into the air. He put them in platforms way up here. So this is your OG ground-based cloud seeding generator. Wow. He would make these huge vats of chemicals, and this is a picture, actual photos of him. And we have some newspaper articles. This is from 1906 with the Rainmaker, how Hatfield flooded California. For what benefit other promoters who may wish to capitalize the rainfall, let us note that Mr. Charles Hatfield, a professional rainmaker of Altadena, California, received $1,000 from the merchants of Los Angeles in return for a precipitation of 18.96 inches in 3 months.
Wow.
1903.
Wow. So
he made rain for Los Angeles, and San Diego was in a drought. So they thought it was a great idea, to hire this guy. And unfortunately for them, it started raining, and there were also your haters, of course. Continues the fake. Hatfield still doing little of his old stunt outside, works in Oregon, claims he guarantees results under contract to make rain. But at the end of the day, he ended up flooding. The Lake Morena Dam broke, and it did like $3 million worth of damage. So in the end, what Hatfield, I can't play if I hit the next one, it's going to play that the Widespread Panic song, so I have to cut it there. But yeah, he said they offered him $10,000 to make it rain.
Wow.
But then it rained so hard that it did so much damage and broke the Lake Morena Dam that if the government, the city of San Diego, paid him, then they would have been admitting liability for the damages.
Wow.
So he was never paid his $10,000.
Wow.
And that's what the song was actually about,
Wow.
that very story.
Fascinating
Fascinating story.
So this was over 100 years ago. Over 100 years
this
ago.
is in 1916.
Oh, that was 1916. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's over 100 years ago.
Yes,
so
yeah.
1916 is when that happened. You flash forward. I'm just gonna hit the major points here because I have them in just this little slideshow.
Sure.
In 1946, this is when things changed dramatically. If you go to our newspaper section, you can actually see a lot of these. Wow, absolutely crazy ideas. There's 846 newspapers here. And when you look,
800, that's unbelievable.
Yeah. So when you look at it, it has everything from like Tesla's tidal wave maker to, how to control weather, electric shocks for clouds, 1912, electric weather control. And you go on, you're going to see electric rain, producing rain with X-rays, 1919. This was the early days, the pluviculture days. They would try anything and everything. These are hail cannons. They're still in use today. This is called the concussive method, the idea of using high pressure sound waves or air columns to break up hail. These are still in use today. There are old timers who still use hail cannons.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, Popular Science, 1921. So, if you go through this section alone, it'll really blow your mind seeing things like electrified sand being liberated from a plane. Some early chemtrails there. Wow. But yeah, I mean, it's literally a biplane with electrified sand. So if you really want to dig into the history, I suggest you come here. That is totally a chemtrail plane from 1923. Just pumps and pipes, actual pumps and pipes, not like the stuff you see on all the channels. But anyway, back to where we were. So before 1946, we would call that whole area pluviculture. And then in 1946, we enter the age of cloud seeding, or what we would call science with air quotes. So during that time, Vincent Schaefer, Irving Langmuir, and Bernard Vonnegut invented cloud seeding. And you have to mention all three because they get into a real tizzy if you try to throw one of them out. But basically, Vincent Schaefer, this guy, he invented cloud seeding by breathing into a big refrigerator. I wish I was joking about this, but let's keep it real. So he had a cloud chamber that was filled with water vapor that was super cooled.
Okay.
And he would breathe into it and he's like, oh, look, this is changing the dynamics of it. They dropped CO2 into it. And eventually they, also use silver iodide. Silver iodide to this day is the number one cloud seeding agent used around the world. Yeah. There are many others, but at the end of the day, this guy right here, under the tutelage of this guy, and Bernard Vonnegut is Kurt Vonnegut's brother, the famous author. These three guys at the General Electric's lab invented cloud seeding. But Irving Langmuir was pretty blunt when he said, rainmaking or weather control can be as powerful a war weapon as the atom bomb. A Nobel Prize winning physicist said today. Dr. Irving Langmuir, pioneer in rainmaking, said the government should seize on the phenomena of weather control as it did on the atomic energy when Albert Einstein told the late President Roosevelt in 1939 of the potential power of an atom splitting weapon. And this is the quote of the century. In the amount of energy liberated, the effect of 30 milligrams of silver iodide under optimum conditions equals that of one atomic bomb.
Whoa. Wait,
He
say
said that. He said that, not me. Okay, so take his word for it. But I guess the point of this is that when you think about cloud seeding, everybody thinks about it as such a benign thing.
Right.
Oh, it's just little sprinkles, just little fairy dust sprinkles. Nothing to see here. We're just making a little bit of rain. But people don't understand the massive amount of energy that is in rainfall, that is in thunderstorms, that is in hurricanes and tornadoes. They kind of get it with the tornadoes, but not so much in thunderstorms, and how small changes in the atmosphere's constituents can have massive effects downwind, and how energy converts, and how just these small perturbations, as the scientists would put it, can have massive effects. And he went on to say later on that basically he blamed the military for killing people with cloud seeding.
Well, see, okay. So first of all, we have silver iodide that's being sprayed all the time, and now has been for generations.
Yes.
You can only imagine the impacts. We don't have to imagine. We have an idea of the impacts, health, and also, as far as the forest and aquatic life and bird life and so on. But from what I've been gathering, some of the experts out there, they're like, we're here to control the weather, but because it is so dynamic, it's impossible to control it. It's impossible to know the outcome.
Exactly. There is no such thing as weather control. There is only weather modification.
Yeah, they're not controlling anything. They're just doing it and just letting it go. It's total Wild West.
It's the same idea as, when what happened to my mic? Oh, I turned myself down. I was like, I just went deaf. James Roger Fleming calls it the checkered history of weather and climate control. Mm-hmm. But he himself, when they talk about geoengineering, and we're going to get there, geoengineering was redubbed climate engineering. But then James Roger Fleming went to the National Science Foundation's meeting on this topic, which $630,000 from the CIA funded this meeting. And at that meeting, James Roger Fleming said, I think a better term would be climate intervention, because there is no such thing as climate control. In all of the early documents that, if you look through this book, if you look through weathermodificationhistory.com, early documents, they would refer to it as climate modification or climate manipulation. Mm-hmm. And those terms are more realistic. I
actually think we should call it climate screwing.
Yeah, I mean, I would call it climate F-ery.
Seriously. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, that's what we're actually dealing with. There is no way to actually control something so complex, because there's so many variables involved that we still to this day do not understand. They are finding new chemicals in the atmosphere they didn't even know were there this year.
So they have no idea synergistically, right, what the impact would be. Oh, it's like vaccinations, okay, you have this one vaccination and this one, and this one, but how do they work all together? Yeah, correct. Same darn thing.
So I'm gonna show you a little thing. All right, we're gonna go to the map. Okay. And I'll give you an idea of how big this actually is. So I'm going to go through this is cloud seeding generators in China.
Yeah, China's very proud of their cloud seeding. They talk openly and promote their weather modification.
They're covering the entire Himalayas, this area, with hundreds of thousands of cloud seeding generators. No. But back to America, we're going to focus on just America, just so you can get an idea of how many cloud seeding generators there are. I've got quite a few here. And then to make it visible for everybody at home, and then I'm going to zoom out. So this is on the West Coast. And as you can see here, these are cloud seeding generators this is Boulder, Colorado, up through Wyoming, Idaho. These are Idaho Power Company. And you can actually see that I got the original documents right here. Where it came from, Idaho Power Company's cloud seeding program. This is their own documented slides, and it shows where their flight paths are. And then it says right here in green, generators, non-IPCO, generators IPCO operated, or pink. So these are ground-based cloud seeding generators, and they look like this so that everybody knows what we're talking about at home. So I like to say on one side, we've got the real high fancy one with the satellite dish and the, the acetone. They got the chemicals all in a big bottle down here, and the head burners up here, and it burns silver iodide, with the different chemical mixtures. And then over here we have the redneck version, which has been around since 1948 when Irving P. Crick invented it. And it's just basically your propane tank with some acetone in it and a silver iodide head on it. And they burn these at the base of mountains so that it puts artificial snow on top of mountains. This is called...
Who's they? Is this a rancher, a farmer? Is this some state operator?
That guy's literally your local... He just probably owns land in the area, and they ask him to go out. They call him up and say, hey, will you turn the thing on? And he's like, yeah, I'll go out there and flip the switch. But in each of these cases, you can see this is the Humboldt River Basin, where I got the original map locations from. And you can see that basically they're all along mountains. So if I go up here, I mean, if I go up here and I turn on, let's put the satellite on with the labels and everything, and then let's turn on some 3D terrain. Why not? Because that's fun. You can actually see the mountain ranges themselves.
I'll be damn, all along. So I have a question for you. How is it that we have all of these seed, cloud makers, right? Cloud seeding programs and so on. And yet we were, like, for instance, here in California, we were in such terrible drought for so many years.
Because there was a study done by it was called Cal Water 2015. And at it, there was a scientist who actually knew what she was talking about, which I was clapping for. And she referred to it as overseeding.
Oh, wow.
This is the same idea that basically the CIA did this to Cuba. Russia did this after the Chernobyl meltdown.
Really?
Yes. So it's the idea that you can create drought by putting too many seeds in the sky at one time. So the way cloud seeding works is that you have a certain finite amount of water vapor in the air. And when you add seeds to it or chemicals, then obviously with a little bit of help from some static electricity, water condenses on these cloud seeds, and then they get heavy enough to form a raindrop and they fall on the ground. But if you have too many cloud seeds and not enough water vapor, then the drops cannot grow large enough to fall on the ground. So you can induce droughts that way. In the case of Chernobyl, and I'll bring it up on the timeline real quick just so you guys can see it. But
so did they do this for Chernobyl because they didn't want it to rain? They wanted to rain out?
Right. So here, I'll bring it up. I'll just do it on 3.
Well, you bring it up. Can I tell you a personal story? I was 19, just started traveling around the world 2 weeks in, and I actually slept out and camped 3 days in the Chernobyl fallout in the Black Forest of Germany, not knowing there was Chernobyl fallout happening.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of surprised to still be here today.
So with this, I'm going to go up here and make it black again. It's just easier to see everything. So with the Chernobyl fallout, what you see is here's Moscow. This is where the Chernobyl reactor is, right here. Okay, so it's down here. In fact,
how far is Germany?
Let me go back to this. So let me turn this is the reactor. Okay.
Wow.
The reactor is right here.
Wow.
It's down here. So you would expect to see all the radiation here. Yeah. But what we actually see is these huge spikes of radiation here in Belarus.
Oh.
And the reason why is because the rainfall was headed towards Moscow.
Oh my God.
So Moscow, scrambled a bunch of jets to fly out and do cloud seeding back and forth as much as possible to cause all of that fallout to rain on Belarus before it permanently irradiated Moscow.
Does Belarus know this to this day? Do they actually know this? Do you have any idea?
Now they do, but they didn't at the time. And if you actually go here to this is the actual timeline. I'm just showing you the major points up here. But if you go to the timeline, you can actually sort it by geoengineering, weather modification, or space weather modification.
Wow,
so you can actually sort through it. But if I type in Chernobyl right here, I'll prove to you that I'm not making this up. It was called Operation Cyclone, and there's a great description of it right in here. All right, here you go. So that day, Moscow airport, technicians loaded artillery shells with silver iodide. Soviet Air Force pilots climbed in the cockpits of their Tu-16 bombers, and they made easy 1 hour flight to Chernobyl, where the reactor burned. The pilots circled. Following the weather, they flew 30, 70, 100, and 200 kilometers, chasing the inky black billows of radioactive waste. When they caught up with the cloud, they shot jets of silver iodide into it to emancipate the rain. In the sleepy towns of southern Belarus, villagers looked up to see planes with strange yellow and gray contrails snaking across the sky. The next day, 27 April, powerful winds kicked up, cumulus clouds billowed on the horizon, and rain poured down in a deluge. So if Operation Cyclone had not been top secret, the headline would have been spectacular. Scientists using advanced technology save Russian cities from technological disaster. Yet, as the old saying goes, what goes up must come down. No one told the Belarusians that the southern half of the republic had been sacrificed to protect Russian cities.
Oh, how awful. And
all of these are cited down here, so you can actually see where they came from. This was from Kate Brown, who wrote the story on it for The Guardian. This is from New Scientist, 1990. How we made the Chernobyl rain, and the list goes on. And I actually have the guy who actually did it. This is one of the Russians who did it. Weather modification by aircraft cloud seeding, where he talks about that, and there's the PDF, which I also have a backup of, because it's going to disappear from the internet. But yeah, and
so were these pilots actually also flying through the radioactive plume? Did they have to actually fly through it themselves?
Yes.
Well, that was a sacrifice.
But this is the kind of thing that most people don't know about.
Well, see, okay, so my question to you is this: is there a real possibility then all of this drought, unlike of course this last year is not the case, but the last few years of drought that we've been having in California could possibly be due to over cloud seeding?
It's a combination, in my personal opinion, of multiple factors, one of which is cloud seeding. The other would be the shipping industry, obviously. Mm-hmm. So if you look at marinetraffic.com, mm-hmm. In fact, if you go back, I'll do this right here with you, just so you can get an idea of all the things all at once. So I have on here a thing called Earth Monitor, which you can just click on, and it brings up all my things. So this is what I use to monitor the entire Earth all at once.
Wow.
So right here for ship tracking, I go here to marine traffic.
And can you? Wow! Can you explain to people? Are all those are all the ships at this very moment?
This is live.
Oh God!
This is all the way live. Don't make me do that.
Well, that explains why so many whales and aquatic life are dying. So, can you explain to people what ship tracks are? A lot of people are not familiar with that.
Sure. So ship tracks are the same thing as chemtrails, contrails, plane farts, the ones you see over your head, except they are hundreds and hundreds of times larger. They are multiple thousands of miles long in most cases, And like I said over here, you can actually come over to these and see pictures of how big these ships are.
They're gigantic. They're huge. It's scary.
So what you have is a case of all of the exhaust from these ships is now drifting over land. Then you have cloud seeding projects in Texas, or I mean California. Hold on a second. I'm going to go to climateviewer.com. How Texas stole California's rains, right there. And this is something I wrote a long time ago, back in 2015. Doesn't really matter, given some history.
How Texas or California? What was that again? How
Texas stole California's rain. It's a long story, but anyway, so to give you an idea, this is an infographic, which I'll just blow up real big for you.
Thanks.
Open image, a new tab, and we'll make it large.
Okay.
So you can see these are the locations. Lake Almanor is PG&E, so that's Pacific Gas and Electric.
My power company.
Yeah, your power company pays for weather modification right here. Tahoe Truckee is Desert Research Institute. Sacramento Municipal Utility District, SMUD, does the Upper American River Basin. PG&E, Upper Mokelumne. I don't know how to pronounce that.
I don't know.
But anyway, Desert Research Institute, Carson and Walker River Valleys, Modesto Irrigation District, SCE, Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, Kings River Conservation District, Delta Water Conservation District, North Kern Water Storage District, Santa Barbara County, and Monterey County. These are all of the government institutions and private companies that pay for cloud seeding.
And this is what's upsetting to me, is there actually cloud seeding all around us and over our heads to bring water down to Southern California and Los Angeles, and we're bearing the brunt of being sprayed.
Yeah, so the thing I like to point out about this is when you think about cloud seeding projects, you don't realize how many are actually going on till you really start clicking through all of the maps. And these are the government reported weather modification activities. These are the ones that were reported to the United Nations. And these are the ones bragged about by Weather Modification Incorporated down here. We're not even going to get into the HARP stuff and all that. We'll just leave that alone for now. But then you look at it like this, and now all of a sudden we got a really creepy thing going on, because these are all of the weather modification projects. So as you can see, if you see a mountain, this is a Eastern Idaho counties purpose snowpack augmentation. As you can see here, 999 square miles, 140 square miles. And I mean, the list just goes on and on. 12,288 grams. What do you say? 30 grams was a nuclear bomb? Yeah. So it's kind of out of hand. When you look at these, basically these ground-based cloud seeding generators, they operate October through March of every single year.
Who's regulating this?
Oh, these are lawsuit cases. I was wondering what the eyeballs were in there, but yeah, Southwest Texas legal case where somebody Southwest Weather Research Inc. versus Duncan and Southwest Weather Research versus Jones. Local farmers file injunction against cloud seeding firm who they claim allegedly decreasing rainfall to their land. So this not only includes weather modification project, it has legal court cases, all kinds of stuff mixed in here.
And is there any oversight?
Little to none at all. And that's the biggest crime of all, is that if people knew what was going on, then when we have floods that occur all along here up to the Mississippi Valley, all from October through March of every single year, they're creating artificial snowpack. They're creating what they call snowpack augmentation with these ground-based cloud seeding generators, so that in the springtime, that snow will melt and feed things like the Colorado River and, feed all of California.
And the hydropower where they can produce energy. Yeah.
All of that, because it's basically Dryville over here. So that's what's funding all this. And that's why you don't see any over here. These are from back in, this is 1977, this one says 1995, but I mean, really, they're 85. There are no active weather modification projects over here. These are actually air transport chemical trace things. So there's no active weather modification projects on the East Coast. They're all on the West Coast. But the East Coast pays for it because we're the ones getting, the baseball size hail, the blizzards, the torrential rainfall. Texas has one of the largest weather modification projects. They actually have several different groups that are involved in this. And they have the Texas Licensing Division for Regulations, TLDR. It's something it's like too long, didn't read. And they were broadcasting their weather modification licensing on YouTube for years, but I trolled them one too many times and they turned the comments off. But yeah, it's really amazing when you look at it like this and you start to think.
China's ridiculous, but when you look at us, the West, like west of the Mississippi, that's insane.
Yeah. And this happens every single year. Starts in October, ends in March.
And it's just amazing to me how there's no question during droughts or prolific rainfall or snowfall that nobody ever puts this into any kind of, form of a question. Like, could it possibly be due to, weather manipulation, cloud seeding? No one ever asks that. So this is where you're seeing
this is the drought monitor overlaying the weather modification activities.
So what they're doing is what you can see there is that all the rainfall is happening right there, and it's robbing the areas where the drought is obviously occurring.
Look how downwind of that.
Oh yeah.
The major drought.
So what's happening is they're putting the accumulating into the snowfall, the snowpack. Then it goes into the rivers, which goes into the hydroelectric, dams and so on. But what they're doing is they're putting it into the hydroelectric dams to make more power, but they're robbing the guys in the Midwest of having rain.
Pretty much. So to answer your question about California, it's a combination of many different factors. Obviously, that's, the ship tracks, the cloud seeding projects, and the other one would obviously be, let me just collapse all these and come down here to the Earth Monitor, and we'll go to the ADSB exchange, and that's where you'll see all the highways in the sky.
I'm having some funny audio stuff with you, by the way.
Is it better now?
No, it's kind of, I don't know if it's on your end or my end. I think it's on your end. So what you have here are then the flights. These are actually airlines.
Right. And you can see the highways in the sky. So when you combine all of these different aerosol generating apparatus, there's not enough water vapor available with all of the pollution sources and weather modification projects and the planes flying over the ships in the Gulf. And then finally, the last one would be the fact that the entire West Coast is also known as the naval warfare testing grounds. So you've got the U.S. Navy off the coast of California, Oregon, Washington, dumping chaff, flying in circles, doing all kinds of stuff, firing off rockets. All of these chemicals are coming over, and any water vapor that would have normally fallen is just dispersed among so many millions and billions of particles that California really doesn't have a chance.
So basically what you're saying is
what I talked to,
it's basically an unintended over cloud seeding, which is what you're saying is possibly happening. So we're all of these different entities, the military,
unintended and intentional, because when you look at things like this, that how Texas stole California's rain, the whole purpose of this article is that there's these guys, that's steering lightning bolts. We'll move past this, but there are these things called atmospheric rivers.
Yes.
So if you've never heard of an atmospheric river, I've got a great little thing right here for you to see what one looks like. And it's a huge amount of water vapor that's in the air. And used to, there would be numerous, atmospheric rivers that would come through. And when they do, that's when you usually see the mudslides and all of that sort of thing, because normally there's too many cloud seeds and not enough water vapor. But when an atmospheric river or an arm that reaches out from the equator whips over America, especially over California, you get the torrential down, pours that you normally don't see.
Right.
And this is something else they talked about at the California, that Cal Water 2015 was, well, can we get an atmospheric river like scheduled now? That would be nice. Well, turns out there was a group called Acquiesce, and I actually interviewed the scientist who's involved in this. His name is David Miles. I have an interview with him.
Oh, yeah.
And he came up with this idea to steer atmospheric rivers using ground-based stations. And he was working with, he did what was called rain aid. They did it in the Horn of Africa. They also did it in Australia. He is an Australian.
He's an
and
Australian.
they show like these atmospheric sine waves where they, alter the path of entire areas of clouds. This is David Keith here. I don't know. Can you hear that?
No.
Okay. But yeah, this is an older interview. I could quickly route my sound through my mic.
So in 2015, I remember here in California, our water is being rationed to the point of if you wash down your car or your sidewalk or anything like that, you get a $500 fine because we were so desperate for water.
Right.
So is Texas taking our water?
So in 2012, Acquiesce and Cyblu, which is retired Air Force Colonel David Kaczynski and David Miles from Acquiesce, which is now known as Miles Research, they got permission from the Texas Licensing Board to steer an atmospheric river into Texas. And I mean, I have the receipts from the Texas Licensing Board. I've interviewed the guy who did it. I know everything about the other guy who David Miles claimed that the Air Force guy literally stole his technology, that he bugged his hotel room. But the plan was to take water vapor and basically an atmospheric river from the Gulf of Mexico and route it into Texas. And then you can see here, this is what's known as an anomaly chart. So not normal. This is the 7-day anomaly chart. And then you can see that this is the May departure from normal precipitation, which is, their way of bragging that they can do it. So it says Acquiesce is offering sovereign states an augmented rainfall capability as a part of its new regional toolbox to strengthen economies, replenish dry land agriculture, and improve food security. And this is the latest thing. China's doing the same thing. It's called the Project Tiani, or Heavenly River.
Can we go back to that one, the 4 slides you had up there, all the last moment, and the bottom left hand corner with all the red? Was that the result from redirecting?
Yes.
All that red,
Yes.
along the western, was because of them redirecting the flow.
Oh no. So
I must see right there.
This one right here, the red is 0. So the purple is a massive increase, as you can see here. So let me go over and I'll let you see the chart. So you can see percent increase from 0 up to, this is 100, this is 200, 300, 400, 600, or 800. I can't read. That's really grainy. But clearly, the blue and purple is somewhere between 200 to 600% increase in rain that should not have occurred.
No, that's crazy. So did they steal the moisture, the water from where it's all red in California, Nevada, Utah, and so on? Would it have?
That was kind of the point of the article, was that, in 2015, it's around the same time that we started to notice a shift in the atmospheric rivers, normal, rain patterns. and it started showing up in Texas more often, just regularly.
Oh,
And this was also, if you remember back, this is when like half of Tucson and no, I'm thinking Dallas Fort Worth and the floods that covered almost all of Texas.
Yeah.
So they're also bragging right here. This is the U.S. Drought Monitor, January 2012. And this is after they did the steering the atmospheric river into Texas. So before and after.
So here they did all of this redirecting. It caused all this damage, flooding, chaos, mayhem, and they're just happy because they got their water.
Right. And this is what an atmospheric river coming into California should look like. But as you can see, even in the case of this, it tends to hit right here along the coast, right at the mountain ranges of the coast, and then just die off, which is not normal. I mean, it should just continue right on over. So I think, I have been to LA and I've breathed the smog. I think it's still affecting me to this day. But this is that Cal Water study where they actually talk about it. I keep all my receipts. There may actually still be a comment here with my timestamp on it. 8 years ago, I thought I timestamped it, but I was like, yeah, I featured you guys in this. But right here towards the you're not gonna be able to hear it. But anyway, yeah, this is where she talks about overseeding the sky and how that can, basically dust from Africa affects the storms here. And, basically we can overseed the sky and that would cause rainfall to shut off. This is the AGU fall meeting 2014.
Wow. So
go ahead.
You had also mentioned to me that, like, for instance, when it comes to jet fuel, there's no regulatory body out there that also regulates the production of jet fuel. Is that correct? Like, it's having a standard what can and cannot be in it? Well,
yes and no, because technically the FAA, they have their regulations. Most of it tends to roll down from NATO. Other countries might follow different regulations. The governing bodies on this sort of thing, they have what are called STANAGs or standard agreements of what should be in the jet fuel. And I guess you probably wanted to see the thing because I was supposed to email you and I literally got way behind, but I'll bring this up real quick.
So NATO, why NATO?
I mean, I would just you just follow the money and then you end up at NATO. I don't know why, but that's where I ended up. So I'll bring this up on the screen. So Contrails Geoengineering and the NATO single fuel concept, and their basic idea was one fuel for the battlefield. And I'm going to just scroll down to it. So they talk about
so you talk about bunker fuel. Bunker fuel is this fuel for all planes, right? So it's battlefield ready. Is that correct? Bunker fuel? Bunker
fuel's for ships. That's the heavy fuel oil for ships. But this gives you an idea. So right here, this is JP8 and this is ice crystal growth. But this is JP8 with a plus 100 additive. And you see how much smaller the ice crystals get.
Yeah.
The smaller a particle, the longer it stays in the atmosphere. This is called a plus 100 additive or a HITS additive, high thermal stability. And this is what they're talking about here. Propulsion research could revolutionize jet fuel. In 1989, the Propulsion Directorate began evaluating jet fuel additives to reduce coking and maintenance costs on aircraft engines and fuel systems. In 1994, the Directorate selected an additive designated Spec Aid 8Q462 to test on F-16s, and the resultant additive fuel designated JP8 plus 100 raised the fuel's thermal stability by up to 100 degrees Fahrenheit hotter without increasing its propensity to form coke. So most people don't know that they actually heat the jet fuel in the actual tanks. And that's to keep it from freezing. So they're talking about like U-2 spy planes and all that sort of thing. So when you get down to it, there's all these different types of jet fuel. Now, most planes, commercial planes, fly Jet A. Most military planes fly JP8 or JP8 plus 100. The plus 100 additive is now in transcontinental flights. They fly higher, they fly longer, so they need to heat the gas up even hotter so it doesn't freeze. And then there's all these different additives, and I promised you, I have a infographic right here, which we can bring up, and you can actually see.
Every time you start talking military and stuff like this, the sound gets all wonky. So hopefully it'll be okay. just saying.
So behave, military guys.
So this is all the different additives.
So on this column right here, you can see the types of additives, and then over here you see the different types of jet fuel. So this is Jet A1, Jet A, Defense Standard 9191 Jet A1, Defense Standard 9186 F44. And I have all those right back here on the other page.
Right
here. So if you want to know what those different standards, so like F34 is JP8. So you got to know what the codes are. Like F40 is JP4, F44 is JP5. If you don't know the NATO codes for it, they also have what's called MIL standard. So it's MIL T5624 is AVTAG, FS2 is NATO, F40 is JP4. So like you have to get all this terminology down to be able to understand all these.
It's nice and confusing.
Yeah, on purpose. So as you can see here, JP4, JP5, JP8, Jet B, Jet A, A1. These are Canadian standards here. These are military standards here. This is international IATA standard, defense standards. This is General Electric. This is Pratt and Whitney, and then these are Air Force QRJOS, Jet A1 joint checklist. So what you look at on this chart is down here at the bottom. Gotcha. Optional agreement, engine manufacturer's agreement, or required are. So what do you see when you go scrolling through this? Things like static dissipator. Required, optional, required.
And what is that? What is that?
So the static dissipator status 450 is dinyl nathyl sulfonic acid, Denza, DINNSA is the short for it. It's supposed to stop static from being generated.
Gotcha. Boy,
so that whenever they're going to refuel the plane, they don't blow it up.
That's nice. Your audio is really wonky. I'm hoping it'll be better when we actually upload this, but it's very wonky. You start talking about the military and it gets weird. Just saying. So
why is my audio acting stupid today?
Now it's better. It's actually a little bit better. So
okay, good.
Kinda.
So is it when I start moving the screen around or something?
No, it's not. Even when it's off the screen, it still happens. It's a weird thing. So, and you told me a staggering number, by the way, too. You told me how many planes were flying in 1970-ish, 1990s to compared to today. Can you give that number? Because when you said that to me, I was like, holy cow. What is that number over time?
Here, look. Let me get this thing up real quick. It was I got a bookmark for this.
It makes me feel awful to ever fly again and or order something, online that has to be flown in.
Maybe this is it. Military aviation fuel. That's not it. It's not global security. It's something. I've got it bookmarked here. I have way too many things bookmarked. That's my main problem.
I can only imagine the bookmarks you have.
I have way too many bookmarks. So let me go real quick. I'm just going to go to my Gmail and I'm going to bring this up because I want to actually see the numbers.
It's staggering.
And bear with me for one moment.
Sure.
There it is. There's nothing we can't find. Cookies, whatever. we can deal with your cookies. All right, so here we go. So when you look at the numbers on this, it kind of boggles the mind a little bit. So jet fuel consumption country rankings. This really gives you the raw numbers. This is in, as they put it here, all the way down at the bottom of this list. Just grab it and scroll down. Indicates the estimates the volume of jet fuel consumed within a country expressed in thousands of barrels per day. Okay, so when they say that, you put whatever numbers here times 1,000. So we just add 3 zeros. Suddenly we have 1,369,000 barrels of jet fuel per day in 2021. 2022, 1.5 million. 2020, down to almost 1 million because of COVID.
Right.
2019, 1.7 million. So we still haven't got back to pre-COVID levels of jet fuel use. But China coming in second place at 800,000 barrels per day. The UK at 265,000 barrels per day. We're responsible for the majority of the jet. I mean, you can add up the next 5 countries and we're smoking them. But this only goes back to 1980. And we can come back to 1980 and you see that. So just from 1980 in the past 20 years, that's double, almost triple, you know, in a lot of the other cases of the other countries, because none of these countries could even put up 100,000 barrels per day. And when you look at the difference, you know, we've doubled, just the United States doubled its jet fuel in the last, since 1980 to today. And it's only going to get worse. So you can imagine that if it's doubled from there to there, but then you add in the fact that all the other countries have tripled, if not quadrupled, their output. This is the kind of stuff that nobody wants to think about. They just want to, you know, oh, it's all, you know, secret stuff. It's, you know, you just have to look at the amount of chemicals that are in the fuel itself.
Right. And so you have in the I think like the 1970s, you said we had like 70,000 flights per day.
Roughly.
And then like in the 1990s, we had like 90,000 flights a day. And now we have 100,000 flights at any given moment in America.
Pretty much. Yeah. There's probably 100,000 flights in the air right now as we're talking. If you go to ADSB Exchange and you look and you zoom out,
show that to people, because you showed that to me last week. I gasped. I was like, and what we're finding too is that in addition to this geoengineering projects and weather modification and cloud seeding, but what we're also finding in the snow and the rain samples and so on are the barium, strontium, cadmium, cobalt, you know, lead, nickel. It just goes on and on and on. But that's also in the jet fuel, which sometimes they just dump as well, not just burn it, but they just dump it over people's heads. Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
This is shocking. Look, that is just.
This is just America and the flights coming across the sea. But then when you zoom out and you look at the whole world,
that is staggering. And the other thing that you said to me that was staggering, and I had it confirmed from a friend of mine who was a former flight attendant, is that the pilots take the planes off and they land them. But when they're flying, once they're at elevation, they are actually on autopilot via a supercomputer.
You can see the highways. You can see the highways in the sky. They are very, very clear. That is a highway.
That is a highway.
And whenever the wind is blowing west to east, and the first plane comes by, and then the wind blows a little more east, and the next plane comes by, and the wind blows a little more east, and then the next plane comes by. That's where you're getting your grids in the sky, is because of all of these different highways in the sky, all up and down the coast here, If you go to the major hubs, like right here in Denver International Airport, you can literally just like follow these all back, and you can see all of the different planes that are flying the same route. I did a great infographic on it at one point where I tracked, just a day's worth of, military flights, like the Chinook helicopter. This is why I only rely on ADSB Exchange, because all of the other flight trackers, they will not show you the military flights going on.
No, when you see the military flights in combination with commercial, it is staggering. I had no idea.
Yeah, this is just in San Francisco.
And then at times, so I mean, this is the thing that I find disconcerting is you have all these planes who, when they're actually flying and they're at elevation, their peak elevation, they are being controlled and autopiloted by this supercomputer. I have a question for you, which is kind of a scary question. How do you prevent someone from coming in and hacking that system and not dropping every single one of those 100,000 planes are flying at the same time? It seems.
Oh man, I covered that. Like,
your sound is so wonky again. It seems very precarious to have every plane out there being flown automatically by a supercomputer, and all you need is one good hacker.
So I've been a hacker since I was 15 years old. So I follow many of the presentations at the Black Hat Convention and what's called DEF CON, DEFCON. And there was a DEF CON meeting. I bet you I could find it right now, but there was a DEF CON meeting, hacking airlines. And here it is. This is just 3 years ago.
Oh, there goes your sound again. Must be something good.
Yeah. But if you put it into Google, DEF CON hacking airlines, you can see them actually doing it. I can bring it up on the screen.
Okay, I was going to do it, but go for it. There we go. Okay.
Hacker's first solo airplane avionics security 101. Dr. Will Roper hacking the Air Force and beyond. Renderman, hacker plus airplanes equal no good can come from this. I mean, just, oh Lord, this is the one I was actually talking about. This is back when I was still semi-anonymous. But yeah, 10 years. This is over 10 years old. DEF CON 20. Hacker plus airplanes equal no good can come from this.
I mean, that's mind-boggling to me. Talk about a national security issue. When I look at this and I think to myself, you can have one hacker go in there and you've got 100,000 planes with 300 and some passengers on there, drop all simultaneously, and nobody's thinking that might be a bit of a security issue?
Well, that's one of the big problems with the Boeing 777 Dreamliner and the just taking a nosedive into the ground, and then all of a sudden they have to recall and stop all of that stuff going on. But an even creepier idea is that because you asked who regulates the jet fuel.
Yeah.
And when I talked to Dr. Rangasai Halthori from the Federal Aviation Administration, my question to him was this. I said, well, how do you know what's in the jet fuel? He's like, well, they all sign an agreement. I said, who signs an agreement? Well, they signed an agreement with the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, the United Nations thing. I was like, you mean ICAO? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, so they signed a sheet of paper. And he's like, yeah. I was like, let me get this straight. They sign a sheet of paper. And he's like, I think I see what you're trying to do here. And I said, how do you know that when they sign that sheet of paper that they're actually doing what you say they do?
No test.
Is there any kind of trust but verify? Is there any kind of verification regime in place today? And he was very honest. He said, no, there's not. I said, so what's to stop? Let's just be nefarious. Let's think like Dr. Evil for a moment. What's to stop Iran from filling a plane with jet fuel and cesium-137?
Mm.
And his answer was, well, why would somebody do that? I'm like, I said, you're not thinking like Dr. Evil. Because, and that's the problem here, is there is no checks and balances on what goes in the fuel tank. In addition to all of the fuel additives, now we have these problems with the introductions of biofuels. And there have been cases where biofuel reserves have contaminated jet fuel reserves, and this has caused engine flameouts. It's called a FAME contamination, FAME, fatty acid methyl ester. So contaminated fuel. You got flight line attendants who are playing, backyard chemist, and they're out there going, all right, plane just came from United Arab Emirates. It just landed here. There's X amount of gallons already in there. I got to put this fuel in there. We had to have it. I think it's a 0.05% amount of status 450. So I need to add some more of this barium salt.
Crazy.
Did they add enough already? Oh, hell with it. I'll just stick some more in there.
Oy,
So there are all of these different moving factors that nobody wants to think about. They just want to hear pipes, pumps, secret government programs. And I'm going, how about a whole lot of screwballs with no verification and a whole lot of pollution? And the fuel itself is laden with metal. The additives that go into some of these, especially with the plus 100 additive, if you look at the material safety data sheets on them, they all say the exact same thing. No environmental data was ever collected on this. No environmental studies on this has ever been done. Do not dump in water. Yet, the whole sky is water. So at the end of the day, that's why I suggested to you and Deanna pollution. Look at that option. The other is the obvious geoengineering. So let's kind of circle back to the history thing. Cloud seeding was 1946. Less than 11 months later, they did Project Cirrus, and they tried cloud seeding out on a tropical storm. Guess what happened? It went from a tropical storm, it changed colors, then it changed directions, and then it slammed into Georgia as a hurricane.
Oh.
This was known as Project Cirrus. It was in November of 1947, and cloud seeding had just been invented in October of 1946. So less than 11 months later, they were already out trying to steer a hurricane with this. Went really badly. Did that stop them? No. They went on to do Project Cumulus, Project Scud, eventually Project Storm Fury, all trying to steer hurricanes. Anyway, so in 1977, Cesare Marchetti came up with the term geoengineering. So that's how old this idea is. His idea of geoengineering, and it was actually first mentioned in a report to John F. Kennedy called Restoring the Quality of Our Environment. And I have that as well. And John F. Kennedy famously said at a United Nations address about global cooperation on weather control. But the Restoring the Quality of Our Environment paper, let me see real quick, restoring.
You must have said something important, because there goes your sound again. Sorry.
These damn people.
I know it's good when you start cutting out.
These damn it people. Yeah, so
sometimes you just gotta laugh. You just gotta
I
laugh. I mean, I can't even take this stuff seriously any longer. I'm just like so over it.
Yeah, that's the way it is. So yeah, if you go to the geoengineering here, I'll just bring this up on the screen. Just click geoengineering and roll with it.
Okay, bring her up. I'm not seeing her. There we go. Now she is. Okay.
Okay, so I actually start with geoengineering all the way back in 1887. Why? Because the original talks of geoengineering were all centered around melting the North Pole.
Right.
Reroute warm ocean currents to melt the polar ice caps. Fire a cannon to tilt Earth's axis, melt the poles. This is actually Jules Verne. End of the iceberg menace. A $190 million Newfoundland jetty would cause access to shift, C.L. Riker believes. End of iceberg menace. Plan to send Gulf Stream unchilled into Arctic's heart, abolishing fogs and extreme cold. Space mirrors to focus sunlight and melt polar ice caps, in addition to kill people, burn them up. Atomize the Arctic. We could nuke the Arctic. That would be a great idea, right? Russia's great plan for the transformation of nature. That's geoengineering. So then the same Chinese guys said, hey, why don't we make a metal particle ring, space ring to melt the Arctic? They did that. It was called the Project Westford Needles. So all of these things, they actually did this. They did atomize the Arctic. In fact, I can show you, all the things they say they're going to do, they actually do. That's the creepy part of it.
Right.
Let me clear all these maps off real quick. History and science, energy and pollution, and a bunch of nuclear bombs. Boom. And this is a really big file. Did my sound go out for a second?
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay, so in the Arctic, yeah, they atomized it.
Wow.
This is Russia up in the Arctic atomizing it.
Oh yeah. Well, and I know there's a big race, of course, to the Arctic, have it melt, and of course, go for the oil, the minerals, whatever they can mine and drill.
Yeah. Well, we're already fracking Alaska on the North Slope, so we're well ahead of schedule on all of that. Mm-hmm. If you come up here, you can see all of the different fracking wells. They're like
there's tons. Yeah, it's bad.
Yeah. So this idea of getting to the North, to getting to the oil and gas reserves and under the ice caps and all of that. It's been 100-year plan to do that. So this is just a sampling of some of that. Come on, catch up.
Wow.
So you can actually see.
I thought, is this the Arctic refuge? Is this off?
Yes, this is right up on the North Slope of Alaska.
So I thought that they had prevented that from happening.
No, do you see the trails? Do you see
all over
of
the place? I see it
every one of these pads is a fracking well.
Do you know what president allowed that? Do you have any?
These were bad. I made this map before Obama, so this has been going on for a while.
Yeah, the Arctic refuge. I thought it was okay.
Yeah, so that's kind of my point. Is like, this is what I see as the long-term goal. Geoengineering. They've always talked about melting the poles, and then right about here in 1965, with the JFK report restoring the quality of our environment, you have this sort of tug of war go on, where one group of people are saying save the Arctic, the other group is saying, nah, let's keep on doing what we were planning on doing because there's too much money to be made.
Wow.
And this is that lawsuit I told you about back in 1970. U.S. to clamp down on jet pollution. 2 states sued the airline industry over flight pollution. And that's Cesare Marchetti coins the term geoengineering right there. This is them pumping CO2 into forests, called the Your Face Project. Wow. Free air carbon dioxide enrichment experiment.
Oh, that's funny.
So, turns out they love it. Forests love CO2. Who would have thought? They like plant food. But what really turned all of this around was in 1991, Mount Pinatubo erupted and the earth cooled down a couple degrees. And suddenly scientists, got a jolly up their leg and said, well, why don't we make artificial volcanoes to save us from global warming? Right. The other big idea, which was originally dubbed the Silver Lining Project, is the idea of marine cloud brightening boats that suck salt out of the ocean and spray them into the clouds overhead, making them whiter, brighter, and they reflect sunlight.
We're really, really bad at playing God. I just want to say.
Yeah, we are. So this is Russians' first geoengineering projects were in 2005. This is Yuri et al. 2000 field experiment on studying solar radiation. That's a Mi 24 Hind helicopter, and it's spraying them chemtrails. And this is I think it's called a TPC 65 truck. It's a cloud generating truck. But if you don't think that it was a geoengineering project, then you're going to have to chew on this image, which basically shows here's the wind directions. Here's where they were actually spraying it with the helicopter. Oh, and what were they doing? They were measuring the sunlight as it passed through the clouds because it was a geoengineering project. That was the whole point of all of this aerosol generation.
Wow. Okay, gotcha.
So yeah, there's been a long history of this stuff. And I'll go back to this real quick. Making artificial tornadoes, the weather both of these laws, they passed some laws to try to get funding for weather modification and steering hurricanes and all of that. Recently, they've just failed miserably. So I put a big fat fail on it. HARP was at full power by 2006. The Department of Homeland Security had a hurricane modification workshop in 2008. Bill Gates made his FISER to fund geoengineering studies in 2007. Council on Foreign Relations loves to use penises and infographics.
Lord.
They just can't help themselves, but there's a big pink penis right there if anybody didn't notice that. Council on Foreign Relations on Planetary Scale Geoengineering 2008, same time. And the list just goes on and on. After the DHS said they wanted to steer hurricanes, NOAA said they wouldn't do it, citing Project Storm Fury and how they failed miserably at it. So what did they do? They turned to NASA and other groups to do the hurricane modification. So that's what prompted the Hurricane Project Hermit and HAMP, or the Hurricane Aerosol Microphysics Program. So they did that anyway. Bill Gates and company talked about putting a hose up into the sky to spray chemicals in the stratosphere from the ground. So all they needed was a balloon. This is now what's called David Key's ScopeX project, which you can see a little further down here. You'll see the regular characters and all of that. But David Key's Strato Cruiser is the same idea as what Bill Gates and them talked about in 2009, the Strato Shield. So once you know the history of all these geoengineering programs that they've talked about, you start to see a pattern just repeat itself over and over again.
Right. Well, and that's why I wanted to have you on, and we wanted you to speak about, the history, because first of all, people think it's rather new, has not been going on that long. There's not really that many programs or test pilots. And of course, people are asking us, well, with this lawsuit, who are you going after? And we're like, we know this is going to take us a little while, because as you were just demonstrating, there's so many perpetrators. There's so many different projects and programs, right? There's so many different directions to go in. What we're trying to navigate is what's the most likely case that we're going to win, that has the most, strong legal case precedents, where we have injury, it's a good solid tort claim, and so on. And we've got a lot to pick from, but we got to really narrow it down specifically where it's a very clear cut case. And what you're really demonstrating is like how huge of a topic this really is. It's gigantic.
Because at the end of the day, all anybody's talking about is contrails or chemtrails or plane farts. They talk about cirrus clouds. And the only evidence that we have of that actually being geoengineering was by one of the top, meteorologists on the planet, Chuck Long, from NOAA's Earth Systems Research Lab. And he said it in clear English. Are we already conducting geoengineering? The problem is that he wasn't actually talking about clouds at all, the stuff that everybody's talking about. He's talking about this ice crystals, the haze that's building up. And when geoengineers like Ken Caldera and David Keith, when they're talking about geoengineering with stratospheric aerosol injection, they're not talking about clouds either. They're talking about what you're seeing in this picture right here.
I see this all the time.
The buildup of ice crystals in the stratosphere, the buildup of aerosols in the stratosphere to block sunlight just enough. So we have this disconnect between what the public's been told by talking heads on YouTube and conspiracy websites. No nice way to put it. Focusing on just, planes making clouds. Now, whether they're a part of a secret geoengineering project or not, misses the entire point. 1.5 million gallons of fuel, 1.5 million barrels of fuel per day, just in America. Those fuel tanks are filled with all of these chemicals. And I can actually show you what chemicals. Like, I have the receipts, and studies, not just from the Air Force, but from multiple universities and all of that, of the metals coming out of the planes, and then other people flying through those clouds that the planes made and saying 75% of the cloud seeds in cirrus clouds are man-made metals. So there is no doubt about any of this.
Your sounds wonky. Your sounds wonky again. So you must be saying something important. That's kind of crazy. No, yeah. I think that the thing that I'm getting is that, yes, there's weather modification programs, cloud seeding, and so on. But one of the things you made very clear to me is that just the military and commercial flights themselves are altering the weather, creating clouds, which we never talk about.
Yeah. So, I mean, at the end of the day, like I say, hashtag cirrus clouds matter, because if you care about the white streaks you're seeing overhead, then you should care about why they are there and try to understand that, and not just understand it from a paranoid perspective of it must be secret pumps, pipes, etc. Especially when I've got newspaper articles back to the 1950s of just that, of people complaining about the entire sky being covered by aircraft traffic, and basically, going to the military and saying, hey, what the hell's going on here? And the Air Force coming back to the city of Palm Springs, California, and saying, hey, there's highways in the sky over your city in 1959. And if you don't like it, you got to either deal with the vapor trails, as they put it, or move the city of Palm Springs. So that's what I see as the real problem. When you got pure, concrete evidence, 1948, 1958, 1960, 1970, they get sued by the state of New Jersey and Illinois over what they called smoke pollution of the sky. Was it a secret government program back then? Is every single plane since 1950 been involved in a secret government program? I'm just trying to use common sense on this one. Like, I go with my gut on a lot of things, and then I go and I take these ideas and I not only put them to people who are going to agree with me, I go to people who I know are going to disagree with me. And I say, all right, debunkers, hey, Mick West and Metabunk and Contrail Science, I'm going to post this on your forum and have at it. Right. So when I went to the EPA hearing up in Washington, D.C. on flight pollution, I posted my entire transcript of what I was getting ready to say to the debunkers. And I said, have at it, boys. And they could not. I said, debunk one sentence. That's all I want, is for you to find one sentence out of this 10-minute speech I'm about to give. And if you can find one sentence that's incorrect, tell me how, why, and provide evidence. And they immediately started going, you're just doing this for the money. You're just doing this because you got to GoFundMe to go up to Washington, D.C. You're just doing it. It was all ad hominem. It was all personal. It was all motivational. I said, no. None of that's going to work today, boys. We've been fighting for the better part of 10 years. So either put up or shut up. And, 2 months went by and nobody. And then I went to an even uglier group on Facebook. I'm not even going to mention them because they're that dirty of punks. These guys literally target 16-year-old girls on Facebook that say the word chemtrails and harass them and their family. So I took it upon myself to harass their family. But regardless, I went to that group, into their Facebook group, and said, here's my speech. Also, you guys claim to have pilots and military people and all this in this group that just hate the fact that people are talking about chemtrails. One line, please. So I've been to the deepest, darkest armpits of the internet with, my speech to the EPA. And to this day, I've just been proved right over and over again. Even the Supreme Court came back last year, and I had a like my 14th victory video going, hey, you remember when I had that EPA thing and I said that they were violating the spirit of the law of the Clean Air Act and trying to regulate greenhouse gas emissions coming from planes? The Supreme Court just said the same thing I said.
Wow.
So it's like everything, it's so crazy that all of it came true. And it's still coming true today.
Well, I'm glad you're assisting us, and we have a lot of different experts, and you're definitely one of them who's just like really laying it out there and giving us a really clear picture of what's going on, so we can kind of delineate fact from from fiction and so on. So I'm going to have you back on again, and I'm going to bug you some more, so you can't ever escape. And I'm just so grateful for you, Jim. Thank you so much. This is an hour and a half. We're going to be about an hour and a half. So I just want to say,
I'm bad about running my mouth.
Don't you worry. Well, you guys, once again, you can find him at connect.climateviewer.com or climateviewer.org, and check it out. It's an amazing website. And as you already mentioned, you can spend days and days and days on this website. It's very, very well done and very impressive. So I'm just so thankful for you, Jim. Thank you, Jim Lee. Thank you.
I appreciate it, Reinette.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you again, Jim, and everyone. Wait for part 2. We're going to be doing another deep dive on this. And until next time, keep looking up. Thanks for now. Bye, everyone.
If this video resonates with you, leave me a comment because I love hearing from y'all. First time here, be sure to subscribe and click the bell. Yeah! Remember, it would be impossible for me to do this without your support, so please join my Patreon or buy me a coffee on PayPal. And always, attack ideas, not people.